Hello and welcome back. This week's portion of Korach tells us, as the name suggests, about the episode in which Korach and his group of people, he had 250 people with him, how they quarreled and argued with Moshe about a particular matter, which we will get to in a moment. But our rabbis tell us in Ethics of Our Fathers, they say that we shouldn't be arguing with each other in this way, and they give us examples. They say as follows: what is a argument, a machlokas, a dispute that is for the sake of heaven, a dispute that we are allowed to have? They say this is a machlokas between Shammai and Hillel, the arguments between the great sages Shammai and Hillel, who argued for the sake of heaven. And then they say as follows: what is an example of a machlokas that is not for the sake of heaven? Zo machlokas Korach v'chol hadasai. This is the argument of Korach and his congregation. Which is strange, because surely it should have said this is the machlokas of Korach and Moshe, or at least Korach and his congregation with Moshe. Like it says, machlokas between Shammai and Hillel, the two individuals. But it doesn't mention Moshe at all. And the reason for this is very simple. Because Korach and his congregation, they intended it to be not for the sake of heaven. Their argument was, even if they didn't intend for it to be, which is a separate discussion, but certainly the basis of the argument was not for the sake of heaven. And therefore, the machlokas between Korach and his congregation with Moshe, he didn't intend it not to be for the sake of heaven. You couldn't say, Shalom l'shem Shemaim, not for the sake of heaven with Moshe. And therefore our rabbis say in Ethics of Our Fathers, what is a machlokas that is not for the sake of heaven? That's Korach and his congregation. Their part of the argument was not for the sake of heaven. What Moshe did in the argument was absolutely for the sake of heaven. So what was their complaint against Moshe? The heart of their complaint was the following words, which are told in the Sedra: Madua tisnasa'u al kahal Hashem. They complain at Moshe and say, why do you exalt yourselves over the congregation of Hashem? Madua tisnasa'u al kahal Hashem. They accused him of nepotism. They say, look, you're the leader, and Aaron, your brother, is the high priest. It's not fair, you've kept all the good jobs for yourself. Why did you exalt yourself on the whole congregation? Now there is a passage in Tehillim, in Psalms, that actually refers to this particular episode. And the passage says as follows: Vayekanu leMoshe b'machaneh le'Aharon kodesh Hashem. Vayekanu leMoshe b'machaneh le'Aharon kodesh Hashem. That they were jealous of Moshe in the camp, and of Aaron Kadosh Hashem, Aaron Hashem's Holy One. And this is interpreted to mean as follows. What does it mean that they were jealous of Moshe in the camp? You know, rabbis and good people, certainly rabbis, we can never get it right. To some degree, people will always have a complaint, one way or the other. Whatever we do, we're doing it wrong. If we are too much with the people and get involved too much in the people's lives, then sometimes what happens is people say, you know, it's none of your rabbi, that's not to do with you. You stick to the religious matters, the halachic matters. And on the conversely, if a rabbi is too involved in learning or too involved in religious matters, then they say, you know, he's not with the people. He needs to be more with the people. We can never get it right. And this is what Psalms is referring to. They were jealous of Moshe in the camp. Moshe spent his life studying and teaching Torah. And therefore, in the camp where the people were living, they were saying they were jealous of him. He's too much outside of the camp. We're jealous. We want him in the camp. When it came to Aharon, we know that Aharon, his characteristic was, he was with the people. Oyev Shalom v'roidev Shalom. He loved peace. He ran after peace. He dealt with the people. But after they said, Aaron Kadosh Hashem, he is the Holy One of God. He's the high priest. He should stay in the tabernacle and he should do that, not mix in. And to a degree, this is true. What happens is we need to strike this balance. But to a degree, sometimes the complaints are something that we cannot be. People expect us to be somebody that we're not. And we need to have a balance of the two. And this is what is being referred to and hinted at in Tehillim, where it says that they were jealous of Moshe in the camp, and Aaron, they said, he's the Holy One of Hashem, that they wanted to be a different person. We need to recognize the type of person or the type of position that a rabbi has, and appreciate that there is a balance. But when a rabbi is spending his time studying Torah or teaching Torah, that is the time he's meant to be doing that. That's a part of his life. If he's being with the people, when getting involved in, using the term loosely, politics, local politics, there's also room for Rabbi to give advice and try and help in these situations, and not to say, Rabbi, that's not your position to be getting involved with. And this is what Moshe and Aaron were trying to be involved with together. And Moshe was keeping one side of the camp happy, i.e. the Torah side, and Aaron was the rest of it, and ultimately together they managed to lead the people. Then we have the episode involved with Korach is Dasan and Aviram. Dasan and Aviram, two individuals that we're quite familiar with by now. But they were disputing. What happens is, we are told, Vayishlach Moshe likroi leDasan v'la'Aviram, that Moshe, he went to send to Dasan and Aviram. Ultimately, he went to call Dasan and Aviram. Yishlach Moshe likroi leDasan v'la'Aviram. He wanted to call them, and Rashi says at this point, Mikan, from here we see she'ein machzikin b'machloikas. From here we see that we should not persist. Machzikin, we shouldn't have a chazak, we shouldn't persist in strife. I.e., what Rashi is trying to teach us over here is that just because something didn't work once, the fact that Moshe went to call them again, he wanted to try and make peace with them. He made an effort. He said, it might not have worked first time round, but I'm going to try again. Let's try and make peace with these particular individuals. Vayishlach Moshe, he tried again. He sent messengers to call to Dasan and Aviram. Ultimately, they refused to come. But he made the effort. He didn't say, just because we weren't able to make peace before, we shouldn't try again. We should always try and find the opportunities to be at peace and make peace with each other again and again. Even if it hasn't worked before, never give up on attempting to make peace. Finally, we have an episode in which we are told Moshe tries to say to the people, look, Bezois teidun, with this you will know, Bezois teidun kiloi melebi, with this you will know that it is not from my heart. What does it mean it's not from my heart? What's being intimated over here is Moshe saying, look, you know, there were 7 days, our rabbis tell us, that there were 7 days of 7 days in which Moshe set up the tabernacle, the sanctuary in the desert, and he had assumed that he was going to be the high priest. He'd done all this work, he was the leader of the people. He assumed that when this is actually ready, he's going to be the high priest. Hashem turns around and says, you need to appoint Aharon. You need to appoint Aaron. He was a little bit upset at this point, but our rabbis tell us at the time, this is the greatness of Moshe, he supported Aaron, and fair enough. And therefore he was saying to the people, you should know, kiloi melibi, if it was up to me, if it was my heart, then I would have taken the high priest for myself. The very fact that I gave it to Aaron, my brother, is not a sign of nepotism, but it's the fact that Hashem told me to, because if I had a choice who to give it to, I would have taken it myself. And therefore, this is part of the reason why Moshe was so upset with the people at accusing him of nepotism or taking it for himself, because ultimately it was Hashem that guided him, and he was going to demonstrate and say, look, I'm going to show you with this action that this is Hashem who has chosen me as the leader, and Hashem that has chosen Aaron, the high priest, as the high priest, not something that it was my choice, but ultimately I'm taking my directions from Hashem. And there were various miracles that were performed. He told them to come and do various things, which showed that it was Hashem that was directing what was going on. Very important lesson for us as ever. Thank you once again for watching, and as always, do send me feedback and share this with your family and friends.